Then he started getting hurt. He hurt the back. He had injuries, and he just ran into some problems. And then he just became like, it was like fucking, Benny Hill show or something. It was just fucking comedy the last few years of his career, unfortunately.
Welcome to Rogue Bogues, another episode of the basketball series. A lot going on. NBL Free Agency heating up. NBA going towards the tail end. Pro, looks cold out there, man.
Oh, man, wind chill, man. I left for Florida. It was nice, like 80s. I come back, it's frigid. So not really all that frigid, but it's cold for here. It's probably like in the 40s today. So it's sort of put my Mickey Mouse hat on, took a couple walks, but it's cold as hell out there.
Yeah, good old winter coming to Australia as well. So NBA, we haven't caught up for a couple of weeks. So there's been a lot that's transpired. Who's your team of the week?
I got the Chicago Bulls, Bogues. They've been playing really well. As much as I was on them all year about not being good, I got to say that, they've like every game they're in, they win. They've been winning a lot. In comparison to what they've been doing. You can go easy and go some of these other teams, but, they're fighting for, they're playing sort of seeding there. They won 3 in a row, 7 out of their last 10. Dwight and Josh Giddey, the combination of those two guys have been killing people. Giddey, every time you look up, he's scoring, dishing it out, rebounding it. Dwight, has a slew of 30-point games in the last month or so. Their rookie Bazelis is playing well, finally getting, playing a little bit more consistently, a little more aggressively. And obviously, Vucevic has been steady for that. Billy Donovan just got into the Hall of Fame. Mostly because of what he's did at the University of Florida coaching. He's done a hell of a job. He doesn't get enough credit for sort of keeping those guys, with it. I would think a couple of months ago you wouldn't even think they would have a chance for the play-in, and now they got those guys sort of in the middle of the pack there in the play-in situation. So, hey, great job for them. It's getting boring just putting the same old team every week. So I'm glad that glad to get somebody that's sort of just scrapping to, get through the playoff stuff. But they've been playing well. Giddey's been playing great. But, that Giddey-White combination is great because now, at least going in the future, you have a couple players plus Bazelis that you could probably build with going forward. You hear about a lot of trade stuff with Vucevic, but, he's solid as well, don't get me wrong. But I think they're going to be moving in the future with that, Giddey-White, Bazelis combination.
Yeah, they were. I think they were my team last week or the week before, Pro. So you're just following the trends now, man. But they are.
Hey, asshole! I didn't say I was Christopher fucking Columbus by picking them. I just said I'm glad I didn't pick the same old team every day.
I hear.
I'll give you your credit. God forbid you don't get credit, Bogues. I know.
No, it wasn't so much a credit thing. It's like it wasn't so much a credit thing, Pro. It was just you following trends as usual. It was more giving you shit for that. You got to be your own person. But no, they're playing well. I think. Post All-Star to this point, I think it's the best run an Australian NBA player has had in NBA history. So, statistically, I think he's pretty much a triple-double since All-Star break. With this, and it's not, Giddey historically triple-double meant 11 or 12 points. He's having 20, 25-point games with triple-doubles. His numbers have been phenomenal in this 6-week period, month period. And he's done a really good job. I think he's just aggressive. He's not thinking about it, and they've got a good balance there. Pro, do they max him out? That's the question. Do they have to max him out at this point?
Bogues, I think you have to. You're gonna have to think about it for sure. I would if I'm them. Look, they make enough money. They're in a big market. You want to solidify your point guard going forward. He is a really good player. You're not talking about super max yet. This is a second deal, so I would max him out. Just so you could solidify your spot there. You got White and, like I said, and Bazelis, but I would, Bogues. I don't know if he's a superstar, obviously, but for Chicago, who needs something to latch onto and go forward with. Obviously the ball thing was a bad deal with the knee and getting hurt. So they need somebody to sort of say, "This is our point guard going forward. Here's our star, so to speak. This is our guy." And I'd probably like 85-15 max him out. What do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like, his stock wasn't high after the trade, and he's had his ups and downs in the regular season before All-Star break, but he's pieced together now a month plus of consistent, solid basketball. He wasn't horrible pre-break, but it was kind of up and down. But this last month and a half, he's just been phenomenal. If he continues this form on into a play-in and maybe they sneak a playoff series, you got to do it. I think there's, what else are you going to get out there to replace him? You got the salary floor, obviously, you got to get to, so you got to pay someone eventually. They've moved off DeMar and Levine. So, it's interesting to see where it's all gonna work out. And I think he will get it. And I think someone out there, if they don't give it to him, probably will give it to him. There might be someone that circled him and liked him and said, we think he'd fit in well with our system. So I think they got to do it. And it's a risk because we still don't know what his ceiling is. He's still relatively young. There's a risk there. Where does he get to that next level and grow into that max? Because for people out there, it's not always about today when it comes to a max contract. It's it can also be about, we're paying you on potential as well. You haven't hit your ceiling yet. So, but I think, look, he's had some turmoil in the past. I think he's grown stronger from that. He's finally playing really good basketball on a consistent basis. I think you got to do it if you're Chicago. I agree with you. I just don't think there's any other alternative. Seems to fit well with a small guard in White, who's a scoring guard for him. I think it fits well because they can play. They're going to go to multiple lineups because of Giddey's length. Don't forget they had him on paper at the 4 at times during the season. Like, you can play him in multiple positions because he's bigger than you think. Like, he's a big, long guard, right? Like, you can kind of mess up some rotations and some matchups and do some strange stuff. So I think he's a valuable piece, and I just love the fact that he rebounds hard for a guard. He gets second chance points at times. He moves well without the ball because he's learning how to do that because teams are messing with him, and he's confidently shooting the 3 ball. Might not always be pretty every game, but he's had a couple of games where he's 3 for 4, 4 for 5, and if he continues to do that, get some confidence, another off-season tweaking that shot pro, the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, I think with Peter Patton there as an assistant coach, I worked with him in Dallas. He's one of the better shooting coaches in the league. So I knew with Giddey going there, leaving Chip England in Oklahoma City, arguably the best shooting coach in the league, probably the best, and now Peter Patton, who's a disciple of Chip. I think that's great for Josh, especially that, like, he doesn't have to have the pressure going in. Chicago wasn't a great team when he got traded to him, and he could sort of ease into the position with Peter there working with him. I think it's just great for him, and I think he's going to be good. I think any position when you have great vision like Giddey's got, you've got size and vision. And look, assists are great, but I think having the basketball IQ and the vision to see 2 plays ahead, I really think that Giddey's, not the best passer in the league by anything like that, but he's probably in the top 10 as far as having vision in the league at any position. And I think that having that size, and then getting the shooting better. I think he's shooting like 37 from the 3, 77 from the line. That are respectable. Those are respectable numbers. It's better than shooting, high 60s from the free throw line in 20s and low 30s. So he's easing into being a consistent, serviceable shooter with that size, that vision, getting the experience. And I think it's good to struggle early on in your career, especially if you could just sort of, climb out of it. You get your ass kicked, dust yourself off, and it's like, you know what? I'm gonna live another day. Let me just keep battling through this thing, and that's it. He hasn't gone crazy. He hasn't gone nutty. Nothing off. Well, the off the court thing, I guess we won't talk about. But like, he hasn't been like in a load of trouble off the court. No distraction like that. So now he can just play, ease into it. They got a great young backcourt coming. The Bezelis kid is sort of building into his own. Vucevic to keep or not, but like having young players you can go forward with. I like Chicago. I like where Giddey's headed. So I think it's a good match.
Agree. We'll watch that space. Some other shout-outs for Team of the Week would be, before I get to mine, Indiana Pacers have been playing pretty well. They're 8-2 in their last 10. Boston Celtics, they're always up there, 9-1. They probably get the hard. They don't get it very often, pro, because they've just been good for so long. And then Houston and OKC at 8-2. But I'm going to go with the Clippers. They're 8-2. They won 4 straight. Playing good basketball, really good basketball. Zubats is, former teammate of mine with the Lakers. Loved him as a young guy. He's killing it. He's playing very well. Like, he's a beast down there in the paint. old school kind of, hitting people, rebounding, physical, dunks, everything. He's done a great job, and I think Harden's really established a really nice pick and roll relationship with him. They seem to get it going in numerous nights. Well balanced. You got Powell, you got different guys that can get it going on any given night, and Kawhi seems somewhat healthy. So they're a dangerous team, Pro. I don't know what you think, but I mean, they're in the 7, and they're only one. They're tied with Minnesota for 6. You get them in the first round. If you're, OKC, Houston, the Lakers, who are the top 3 right now, they're a nervous first round playoff opponent. I don't think they're what their record shows. They've had the injury. If Kawhi was healthy from day dot, that record would be much different. So I would not want to face them in the first round, Pro.
Bogues, they're legitimate Western Conference championship type of team. I think you could talk about it if they're healthy. That's the problem. You can't trust that Leonard's going to be healthy. He hasn't been healthy in the last, 3 or 4 playoff series. I think on 3 or 4 playoff years in playoffs, I think besides the championship year, I don't think he's finished a playoff situation. But if they can do that and be healthy, you have to talk about them being a legitimate title contender in the West. Maybe not a championship team, but they can get there. They've got experience, they've got firepower, they've got defense. I mean, you got, like you said, Zubac has been playing great, but I mean, they spread you out, with Harden and Powell and Leonard. I mean, and Kawhi, you got to guard those 3 guys, and then you got Zubac, who, offensive rebounder, play out of the dunker, hard roller. They've got a ton of options, that they can go to. I think that. Look, the record thing is a little bit weird, obviously, at the 7th seed, but they're as good as any team in the West. Obviously, Oklahoma City's gotten all the media this year, rightfully so, but I think if there's going to be one team out of the West that could challenge those guys, I think definitely you got to talk about the Clippers. I mean, they've just been playing great basketball. They're getting healthy. They're just, I think there's just been a lot of talk, there's a lot of talk about other teams and things like in other situations, but I think they're very, very good. They're going to be very tough to stop. Harden's playing as good as he's played in the last few years, and their bench is solid. They play defense. They're very well coached. They tend to play together. You just look, I think they're a good team. I think they're a dark horse that I don't think enough people are talking about them as far as being a legitimate contender in that Western Conference.
A lot of length too in the wing position. You look at their roster right now: Jones Jr., Ben Simmons, Batum, even Kobe Brown, 6'7", younger guy, doesn't play a whole lot. They got a lot of their. You look at their roster; they don't have any small guards and wings. They're all 6'4", 6'5", and above. So in a playoff series, why that's important, Anthony Edwards could be a potential opponent. You got 3 wings you can throw at him with length and size and try to disrupt what he's doing, break up his rhythm. So they're a team, I agree, they're a team built for the playoffs. They can get there. Bogdanovic has actually been really good for them too off the bench with some scoring when Powell doesn't have it and vice versa. They've got numerous guys off the bench that can score for you. Like it's a very well-balanced roster. They've put it together well, but like you said, it always hinges on the health, and the key piece for it is Leonard. Look, even without Leonard, they can somewhat maybe scrape through, make a first round interesting, but they're not going to go much further than that. But Leonard's healthy, that kind of puts them over the top, so that they will be fun to watch. All right, my weak team. Do we have the same one? I wonder if we do.
What do you got, Bogues?
I got the Memphis
Grizzlies. I'll tell you right away.
Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, why wouldn't you give it to Memphis, for sure?
Yeah, so which we'll get into in a sec. We can get into that now and segue into it because we've both got the same team. But they fire their head coach, Taylor Jenkins, sitting in the top 4 in the West. No one really but me again, Pro, had him in the top 4. So they were playing, like, I know that we've debated or discussed, they changed their offense a little bit. They weren't pick and rolling as much. There was some frustration with John Morant, blah, 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 blah. But you're winning games, right? The ball was moving. They were locked in. Well, they go to fire their coach. I'm not sure why. There's rumblings about him and Morant not getting, into a spot where a relationship should be with its star and its head coach. Edey was the other one that was the odd man out at times when they go small ball lineups. There were rumors that he wasn't too happy with him. but they're 3-7 in their last 10. But when you watch them play, it just seems like, generally we always laugh about the fact that when a team fires their head coach, there's that honeymoon period of, we're pumped with it. The assistant that everybody loved is taking over and everything's going well. And we saw it with Sacramento, right? Like when Christie took over, we saw it. They had a nice little jump of a win streak. We haven't even seen that from Memphis. So I think maybe you got to look to yourself, players, a little bit. Like I think a lot of it's on them. And you look at some of the teams they've lost to over the course of those 7 games, and it's not pretty. They've lost to some bad teams at times. All right, Golden State and Boston, then Portland the week before, and Sacramento the week before. So they've lost some games they shouldn't have lost, and it's part of it was obviously adapting to a new coach, but I just think it's poor by the Grizzlies. They will obviously know more than we know, but to go that early on a guy that's got you in the top 4 when most people didn't have you in the top 8. You'd probably at least try to give him the end of the season and then reevaluate with your star players. Is this manageable? But they bit the bullet. They made that decision going into a playoffs, and it looks like they're going to fizzle out the way things are going.
Yeah. So let me just get into the whole Memphis thing as far as from what I've been told and what I've heard and for just sort of paying attention to it. This falls right on management, 1,000%. Taylor Jenkins, they make him fire his whole staff last year, right? So the writing's on the wall that barring maybe getting to the Western Conference Finals, if you know anything short of that, you're probably gonna get removed. They removed everybody but Chucky Atkins. The front office made the decision, and this is where it's their fault. It's no one on the bench's fault. It's their fault. They go and hire Thomas Lasalo, the guy that took over as the interim head coach from Big Paris, right?
Yeah,
he
Paris.
coached the EuroLeague team in Paris. Big time offense, pick and roll guy, heavy pick and roll guy. Pay him 7 figures to be there, basically running their offense. Then they go and they hire Nola Roach, 7 figures to sit behind the bench to run his offense, who's basically no pick and roll. Okay, so you hire those 2 guys. Now, here's where it gets dicey. All right. They run from day 1. They ran Nola Roach's offense. All right. He hired a bunch of his player development guys. Look, he's from New Hampshire. He's my intern when I worked for Tim Grover. He's a brilliant kid for basketball. He's just a basketball junkie. He's into it. He reads. He's just always into something, just sort of like 2 or 3 levels ahead. I'm not an offensive guy, so I never really understood it. So he ran a training business in California. Worked out Russell Westbrook, Harrison Barnes, Paul George, a bunch of guys. A bunch of teams wanted to hire him. Memphis Grizzlies hire him. He runs the offense from day 1. No pick and roll. You hear Ja Morant in training camp, loves the offense. So somebody who's really heavy pick and roll, who's not running as much pick and roll anymore. And it's all Nola Roach's stuff, right? So early season, they start beating everybody, right? They beat a lot of teams. Now, they don't beat everybody. They beat the lower teams. They were like 91%, right? Like they were 91% winning percentage, bottom 6. Then they were like 75 to 80% and the 6 more ahead of that. They won like 62% of their games, from what I was told, okay? From what I was told from media people and from basketball people. Then Ja Morant started getting a little bit, people in his corner, people in the organization start saying, hey, you need to be on the ball more, you got to run more pick and roll. That starts to get in its head a little bit. As they're doing really well, Lasalo's getting all the credit for the offense. All right, even though they're running, like Taylor Jenkins in press conferences, they're asking him, hey, you're like top 6 in offense, you're running like last in pick and rolls. How do you feel about that? So it's Nola Roach's offense, but he's getting very little to no credit for it. He's not really a credit guy anyway, but getting almost no credit for it. So Lasalo's getting all the credit for them doing really well, things like that, right? Then coming out of All-Star break, I start noticing, because they're about to play Dallas maybe in March, and I start noticing that their pick and rolls are starting to pick up a little bit. I'm getting intel from media people and other basketball people saying that they want, Morant wants to run more pick and roll. Lasalo wants to run more pick and roll because obviously he's there. They got him out of France to do this. And now they're running more and more pick and roll because now Morant's mad. And then they're folding. The front office and higher management is folding as far as, we got to make Morant happy. We got to make Morant happy. You got to ditch this offense. So they ditch the offense. They're starting to go from like 20 pick and rolls a game, 30 pick and rolls a game to like 55, 60 pick and rolls a game. And they're playing terrible. They're playing awful. So now they fire Jenkins, right? All they want to say in the media is they ran Lasalo's offense, then they ran LaRoche's offense the last month. It was terrible. And now they had to get rid of Morant, and they had to get rid of LaRoche, they had to get rid of Jenkins, and now they got to go Lasalo. But they were running Lasalo's offense the last month when they were terrible. No offense to his offense, but you go all this way, and they're playing so well. Morant's playing off the ball, and he's playing better. Now then, even when he's out, they win games. They're winning in despite of him. And then like this whole thing about he like missed 6 games, Jenkins gets fired, and all of a sudden he plays again. So it's just like, it's passive aggressive. Morant's got to look in the mirror too and be like, look, like this is what makes you not a top 10 point guard in the league. Things like this. And then we'll get into the whole gun thing. I don't really care about that as much, but like, you have all this issue off the court you're trying to get better with. You have all this stuff non-basketball related. You finally get a new offense. And I think the toughest part for an offense like that, folks, isn't the offense of no pick and roll and selling it to coaches or organizations, because they were tops in a lot of categories, especially assists and moving the ball and things like that. I mean, I'm not an offensive genius by any stretch of the imagination, but it was something new. It was something I think it's good to get people off the ball. It forces you to be creative. It doesn't bring people to you as far as the pick and rolls and handoffs more, now you got to be playmakers. But I think selling it to great players, especially great point guards, is the biggest challenge in trying to change the game and run offense like this. Because it works. It does work. I don't say it's not going to revolutionize the game, but it does work. It is very interesting. And I think it's something that more teams are going to adapt because, look, nobody really wants to go to Memphis. No offense. But if you look at their free agency in the last 10, 15, 20 years, the highest level players they signed in free agency that wasn't their own free agent basically were 2 guys that come to mind. Tony Allen, they signed him for like $4 million a year. They outbid the Celtics, and they with that grit and grind team. And they signed Chandler Parsons for $94 million. Because I remember when we were trying to sign Mike Conley in Dallas, I was in there with Rick Carlisle. We were talking about Memphis, and like, what can we say to people? Like, what can we say to to Conley to sort of say, hey, come to another team besides Memphis? And my thing would be, well, they don't sign free agents. Like
Vince Carter. I think Vince Carter signed there, right?
Vince Carter. No offense to Vince or anything like that.
And
but
Matt Barnes, probably the only other ones I can think of. So
So you need to be a little different.
Yeah.
Like especially your own guys. You drafted in player development, no doubt. But you got to do something a little different. But that's the thing. But how do you hire 2 guys that can't be more different? Mm-hmm. They're not.
It was set up to fail. And then just the fact. Imagine you're a player on that team, and you just got comfortable with this whole kind of new out there system. You're like, this is crazy, but you've bought in and said, all right, I'm going to buy into this. I'm starting to feel comfortable in it. No, we're not doing that anymore. We're going back to pick and roll. I was part of a team like that. I'm not going to name where it was, but I was part of a team that put in the triangle, right? So we put the triangle in all training camp. And about a month of the season, ran the triangle, and then a couple of the stars were like, this is shit, I need my ISO spots, blah, 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 blah. And then management lead on the coach to be like, stop running the fucking triangle. He was kind of the lame duck at the time, so it's like, okay, we switched it, and it's like, so we just wasted 10 weeks of doing this shit and having to go through the good and the bad with it, because you're going to have some bad within your offense. It's perfectly normal. And then just going back to what we did last season before. You just wasted all this development time half the guys were comfortable, half weren't, and then you just like, I just think as a player, then you blame the organisation. If you're a player, you're like, if you're a Triple J, you know, you're like, fuck, do I want to be here long term? Like, this is crazy. What the hell's going on here? You know, I agree. It's not good. It's not good for them. And Morant might leave anyway eventually, right? Like, it's just, you know, I get it. Like, ISO guys, ball heavy guys, like, you couldn't have a Harden in that system. Get it, totally. You wouldn't aim for getting a guy like that. To your point, Memphis can do things a little bit differently, but they got to really hit their free agency targets, right? They got to really get second, third tier stars that are okay in that environment. Ja Morant probably isn't that guy that can play in that kind of environment where he's off the ball for long periods. So you knew the frustration would eventually come. So, but yeah, they you know, factor in the gun stuff. It seems like everyone's doing that these days. It's just. It is part of the landscape, but he's probably one guy that should probably shy away from doing some gun shit, right? So, but yeah, I think Memphis is just this could be a sliding door moment for them if they don't bounce back and at least be competitive, which they've fallen. They were top 4. They've fallen to like 7 or 8 right now. You're kind of like, well, next season starts poorly. Last season they had the injuries. How long till some of your better players just want out, period? Jackson Jr. says, you know what, get me out of here. You know, Ja Morant says, get me out of here. So they're in some trouble. I think it just shows their organization. It kind of feels like they're trying to put band-aids on things and then peel one off here and peel one off there, and it just doesn't seem like it's collaborative. And maybe we're wrong. Maybe they've got a tunnel vision that they see where they're going in the next year or two, and they're all of a sudden super competitive and at the top of the West. So I doubt it, but that's what it looks like from the outside.
Yeah, Bogues. I mean, you gotta do things that make sense, and firing the whole staff and then hire 2 polar opposites, and then Ja Morant. Like, look, with any player you have to be honest, and with Ja Morant, look, the off the court stuff. All right, that's one thing. The injury history, missing games like he does, the lack of shooting that he has, okay? And then not great in pick and roll, really good in open court, could get to the basket, things like that, and very exciting player, for sure. Has some Iverson in him like that. Obviously not at Iverson's level, but he's very good. But you got to be open to some new things. And you got to open up your mind a little bit. You got to open up your game a little bit. And being a guy that could play off the ball a little bit and cut and make plays for other people and not just have to over dribble the ball, wait for a pick and roll, slow things down a little bit, and then go play in the open court. Now, if you want to add some pick and roll to that, great. You know, like a little bit, like the minimal amount. I remember charting games for them just to see, right? Because once I started hearing about all this stuff, I went back and charted all their games. So when they ran pick and roll for a result, a score, a miss, a turnover, right? When they ran 15 or less in the first half of the season, they were 7-0. Now, I think Washington might have been in there and a couple other bad teams, but they averaged like 130 a game. And like they were really good when they were running it to the level where they needed to run it, right? Like low, very few pick and rolls. Just, you know, their offense is predicated on, you know, getting the ball up to the top and then ripping through against the grain, driving it and forcing the dunker guy to help up, and then making a play for the dunker guy or making a play for somebody else, if not getting to the rim, and just moving the ball and not pounding it, not holding it. For Morant to help his career and to really push him to another level, in my opinion, he needs to be off the ball a little bit. Doesn't have to be off the ball all the time, but he needs to be open to doing new things. The game's rapidly changing. Now, not to the level where you're going to take out pick and roll, you know, all the teams are going to just run no pick and roll anymore. But like you have to be open to change and try to evolve a little bit. Look, if you're shooting 39, 40 from the 3, big-time playmaker with vision and pick and roll, then stay with pick and roll. But that's not the case, right? They were good they were good a couple years ago, but that was a couple years ago, right? You're in a different league right now, 2 years later, a different sort of
to your point,
setup.
The Memphis thing, right? Like you're not going to get first-tier free agents ever in free agency. You're not, meaning Doncic's, your Davis, you're never going to get them. So you got to do something. If you're John Morant, you got to have a brain to like, we need to try to do something wacky and wild to try to rattle things in our conference and potentially get to a finals. If we just try to play the same as everyone else, put them against even the Clippers in a pick and roll half court game, the Clippers are going to eat them alive because they've got an elite pick and roll guy in James Harden, and they've got guys that can play out of that system, right? Like, do that with Memphis. It's like, you know what I mean? There's teams out there that are suited towards that. If you're Memphis, you're like, let's try something different. We're a small market. It's why Utah back in the day was so good, because they just ran the same shit with the same group every year. Carmelo and John Stockton era, right? It was pick and roll. First they ran in transition. They crossed the wings every damn possession, so you have to run your ass off. And then they're flowing into a pick and roll. That was their shit. We're not going to change this. This is what we do when we're here. And it worked for them. So we'll be interested to see where Memphis goes. Moving on, Naismith Hall of Fame, Dwight Howard and Carmelo Anthony, much deserved. I mean, the amount of hate Dwight gets at times, I think, in his career he was up and down, did some things, but as a basketball player and the numbers and the sheer domination he put through the league for that 5 or 6 year span in Orlando was Hall of Fame worthy. I struggled with him early in my career in Orlando. Strong, bouncy, a menace at the defensive end. Not much you could really do. Obviously, the Achilles heel was you could foul him, but he even had some okay runs at the line at times in Orlando when he was getting mass touches. But he was a beast, man. And Carmelo the same. Carmelo, obviously, one of the best mid-range turn-face games in NBA history from the post, that high post, 18-foot turn-face, and just shoot it right in your eye. He was elite at that. But both those guys, I think, you can't really argue them being in the Hall of Fame.
Not at all. I agree with you with the Howard thing. For good, for sometimes the less is more. Like the more times he opens his mouth, you're like, what the fuck? Just look. You just shake your head. Some of the things he would do or say or what have you. But as far as a basketball player, just coming into the league and like you said, that 5 or 6 year period. I mean, as a rebounder, he was as dominating as a rebounder that I've ever seen. I mean, the guy was a Shaq-like. If you watch Shaq play early in his career, LSU, early in Orlando. I mean, this guy was a 20 rebound a night kind of guy, any type of night. Now, the offense didn't really have much of an offensive game. He'd overpower you with hooks and layups around the basket. Wasn't really skilled. It'll take him about 3 hours to make minute rice. Wasn't the smartest motherfucker on the planet, but I mean, the guy was really dominating as far as a force in the league, as far as a physical force, rim running, rolling hard to the basket.
He did, pro.
Just overpowering.
If you watch some clips from Orlando when it was like that when they went to the finals, he actually had some stuff. Like he wasn't as one dimensional as people think. If you go back and watch, it was starting to evolve for him. Like, he could go both shoulders. He actually started turn-face bank shotting. Look, it wasn't at an elite level like Duncan, but he'd make enough of them to make you, like, move up a little bit. But then, I mean, I would say that was a 5 or 6 year period. Outside of that, it was pretty one-dimensional. But I think he just doesn't get enough credit for that. I think he was developing into it, and then obviously wanted out of Orlando, and then things spiraled out of control, goes to Houston, doesn't have the ball in his hands at all because Harden's there. But I think there was a period where he was more than just a, catch and finish guy, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, for sure. Like I said, he was more of a back you down. He had the hooks.
Yeah.
I think the more, I remember, when I was working for Kobe in 2009 when they made the finals against him. And my thing with him is, like, anytime he puts the ball on the floor over 2 times, it's a turn. He might as well just throw it out of bounds to set up the press. He was a turnover waiting to happen. But if he gets you deep post sale for that turnaround jump shot, that hook in the lane, for sure. I mean, he was a really dominating type player. Then he started getting hurt. He hurt the back. He had injuries, and he just ran into some problems. And then he just became like, I mean, it was like fucking, Benny Hill show or something. It was just fucking comedy the last few years of his career, unfortunately. Yeah. And then it just, a lot of those things off the court stuff, that followed him, it was a little rough for him. But yeah, as far as the Carmelo Anthony deal, I mean, Carmelo was one of the more dominating offensive players the league has ever seen. I remember seeing him in high school at the Michael Jordan camp playing, playing at night against Michael and those guys. He, as far as just the footwork, the creating space, I mean, he's a guy that you emulate. If you're any type of a teacher, any type of a player that wants any type of, footwork, off the dribble, one dribble, two dribble, face up, post up, that guy's it. I mean, he's one of the more dominating scorers the league's seen. Great mid-range player, a guy that he was just a problem. He was one of the bigger problems that I've seen in probably the last 20, 25 years as far as an offensive player. One of the better ones. Interesting side note, though, Bogues. What does the Denver Nuggets do? Do you retire his number? And if you do, he's got the same number as Jokic. So
yes.
How about that?
Yeah, they fucked that up, didn't they? That is.
How about that? I mean, he did force himself out of town. Now, he was probably the first guy, Bogues, that in the media, that it was him and Darren Williams around the same time, that you heard about it every day a year before he got out of town, that he was going to leave town.
Yep.
He was one of the first guys. He was out of Denver. And I remember the Knicks traded 9 guys for him, to get him. I mean, Gallinari and all these guys went to Denver. It was unfucking believable. But it was like a USAID package coming out of the fucking sky. It was just crazy.
I wonder if they can retire two. Can they retire? They can't really. No one's ever retired it for 2 people, right? It's a hell of a fact.
It's a hell of a fact and fake news. I'll tell you that.
Fuck yeah, that's an interesting one because Jokic is a given. It's just a matter of do they. I know it ended badly, so maybe that plays a part into it, and
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Usually they forget about it. They'll forget about that stuff. They'll retire it. It's good.
You think? Yeah, I think if they would have won a chip there, 100%, no brainer, right? It would have already been retired. But I think maybe just not getting over that hump.
Well, the Mark Aguirre rule comes into effect for the Dallas Mavericks. Mark Aguirre, before Doncic came, he was arguably the second best player to play for the Dallas Mavericks. He was a beast, multi-year All-Star, big-time scorer, but he forced his way out of town. Sort of where Carmelo did, probably worse than what Carmelo did, and they won't retire his number. I couldn't believe they never retire his number. Now that's hey, look, the organization, you want to retire it, You're a little salty about the way he leaves town.
Was Mark there when he wanted out?
What's up?
Had Mark owned the team at that point?
He did. And, being the fan that he is of the team,
that makes sense.
He probably was a little hurt. I was a huge Dallas Mavericks fan when he was there in the 80s, Mark Aguirre, and he did force his way out, and he wanted out, and it was a little ugly. So I get it. The teams have a little sour grapes over that, but it will be interesting if he retires, if they retire his number or not in Denver.
It will be very interesting. Antoine Walker, pro. He further confirms LeBron at Open Gym dominating as a whatever he was, 16-year-old is a lie. So the same people that went into our comments and absolutely berated you and I wonder if they'll find Antoine Walker's socials and go at him as well, because he was there in person, people out there that were going crazy about it. I don't think it was so much our listeners that tune in on a weekly basis. I think it was people that just saw the clips and it got viral and we got a lot of shit as LeBron haters.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Antoine Walker's a LeBron hater too, pro.
The one thing I could say about, and I don't know about the other guys who said that he dominated, the one thing, I've known Antoine a long time. And, like him, hate him, whatever, as a player. As a person, he doesn't have any reason to lie. He's not one of those guys who tries to go viral with all his clips and things like that. And again, I didn't see it. But I did tell you that I had staff members that told me. I asked them, because I was sort of curious about when LeBron showed up. And they told me the same thing LeBron said. That Antoine said. He got there late. He Grover, we would have 2 courts going usually of NBA guys going. And now I think that day they had 1, but Grover makes his paid guys play first. I don't care if you're...
Yeah, it makes sense.
I don't care if you're Jokic mixed with Doncic, mixed with Giannis, mixed with, with Wilt Chamberlain. If you're not a paid client, you're not playing. And Grover is the biggest prick on 2 feet, and he will not let a guy play. And... he played late. He did okay, made some great passes, and held his own for someone that age playing in a high-level game like that. But no one that I knew that was there ever said that they dominated, ever. And Antoine's a pretty level-headed guy when it comes to that stuff. He's got no reason to lie. He's got respect for LeBron. Not one of those guys that like tries to throw shots at guys that are younger generational or that. He just told the truth. He said he played just okay, but he didn't dominate. Yeah, so I invite those guys to come back and say all that shit again. Not that I give a fuck if the guy dominated or not.
It's funny though. Well, the internet, with NBA
funny.
basketball, the internet's like pro MJ, anti MJ, pro LeBron, anti LeBron, and then those two factions just punch on all day in the internet, which is hilarious. Some bad news for Dwight Howard though is he's been scammed out of a fair bit of money by Calvin Darden Jr. Scammed multiple players out of a lot of money. $8 million for some, I think. Chandler Parsons, I think, lost about $8.
$7 for him. $7. So with Dwight Howard, it was $7 million to buy the Atlanta Dream. Not for $7 million, but he was going to be part of the group. He was going to be a part owner of that. What's his name? Chandler was $1 million to work with. To develop. Who's the guy that was in Golden State that just tore his Achilles in Indiana? Wiseman.
Okay, yeah.
To sign Wiseman, that and that agency never even signed him. I don't know how Chandler knew him. Parsons knew the guy or not, but he gave him $1 million to do that. And I think he scammed other people, recording artists and stuff like that.
For a WNBA team as well. Yeah, the WNBA team. But that's he got 12 years in prison, so that's it's going to hurt old Calvin. NCAA Final Four. So all number one seeds in the Final Four, pro. So I think this whole March Madness Cinderella story with the way NIL's going, they could probably rebrand. Because I don't think we're going to see many more Cinderellas. But Houston beat Duke in what people say Duke absolutely choked. Up 7, I think it was, or 8 with 45 seconds left and lost. Shout out to my guy in Houston, Calvin Sampson. He was an assistant coach with the Milwaukee Bucks one year when he got suspended by the NCAA for phone violations back in the day, pro, when he was at the University of Indiana. I don't know if you remember that, but so the NCAA had all these bullshit rules and you couldn't phone athletes out of certain periods or month blackout periods, and he did with a burner phone, got caught for it. I still remember going back, pro, funny story. So he came and signed in the NBA for a year or two because he was suspended. Mm-hmm. He the first time we went back to Indiana to play, so we played the Pacers. All the IU fans, it was bad, man. Like this poor guy, because he cost the university scholarships and they put a bunch of penalties on the university as well, and he got fired. And then because he just left and was like, fuck it, I'll just get a job in the NBA for a year, then I'll still get paid, and then I'll just come back to college. They wanted to kill this man. We had to have security at the back of our bench, like just behind our bench. People were walking up, like yelling obscenities, abusing him. Like, this is during an NBA game, man. Like, so it was like you really realized about IU and Indiana and basketball. It's not something to be messed with. But he took it in stride. I always had a good relationship with him. I liked him a lot. We knocked his team out in the NCAA tournament my sophomore year when he was at Oklahoma. So we kind of had a bit of a bond from that, from beating his team, and then he was my assistant. But I thought he was good value. So congratulations to him. And then Auburn and Florida get that one. So that's tomorrow, right? Australian time. Tomorrow, yeah. So it's Tuesday Australian time, Monday your time. Florida versus Houston. And the women's, there was at least a 2 seed that made the Final Four, pro. So a little bit better. So UCLA lost to UConn, who was a 2 seed. And then South Carolina versus Texas. South Carolina get that. So South Carolina versus UConn in the final there, pro.
And then UConn beat them by like 30 points today.
That just happened,
in our time. So, yeah, so UConn won their, I think Gino, the coach for UConn, I think that's his 12th national championship he won.
What's second place all time? 5? 4? Not that close. Yeah, they kill it. So, and then just finally a $2.8 billion settlement coming for NCAA athletes. So, yeah, I mean, the NCAA, that's for previous infractions too, right, pro?
No, so it's $2.8 billion for, it's a class action lawsuit where anyone who played from like 16 to 24 that didn't have the chance to get NIL money could sue in a class action lawsuit. which is weird though, because it's not all the money's the same, depending on, I don't know how they determine it. It's not by year. It's weird because they had an article, I think in the New York Times, about the NBA players who are going to get checks. So Jared Vanderbilt's going to get like $120,000. Now it's paid over 10 years. So it's like $12,000 for like 10 years. So everybody's like complaining a little bit that NBA players are getting this check, an extra check. But like it could be anywhere from like $30,000 to $100,000 some people they're talking about a couple of $100,000, but a lot of so I don't really know the measurement of how you get this money, but it's payable over 10 years. So it's just a loss of the chances of getting this NIL. It's funny. I listened to Jay Billis talk about, who's a college basketball analyst for ESPN, who's talking about the 2-year deals coming up, where these NIL deals will be 2 years. I think, in my opinion, Bogues, I think that 2-year deals, it's a bad idea to do 2-year deals for schools, and I'll tell you why. It's the same thing. These guys get agents. If you don't want to be there, and they're forcing you to be there because you signed a 2-year deal, they're just gonna they're gonna fake injury. They're gonna say it's personal problems. They're not gonna play. They're gonna sit out. They're still gonna get the extra year anyway because they'll do medical red shirt or what have you. They'll still get the extra year NIL that you have to pay him, and then the next team's got to pay him. I think, Bogues, in my opinion, that the NCAA should enforce buyouts. So like high major to high major, $100,000. So the biggest reason, the two things, Bogues, that the NIL is creating is the transfer portal is a joke, right? You can't limit the times they transfer because they'll just sue you again for it. And they've lost about 8,000 straight lawsuits, so they're going to get sued. But if you say, okay, you could transfer, but either you or the team has to pay this buyout. Here's where I think the second thing where I think this buyout will really help. The low major teams have little to no money in NIL money, right? So you make it where if you get pillaged by your best player, 2 best players in a low major Division I program, going to a high major, they got to pay a bigger buyout. So like a low major who has no NIL loses a couple of players, they got like I would do it where it's $100,000 for high major to high major. If it's a high major to low major, if I transfer down, it's $50,000.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Sorry,
if you go to low major, no buyout.
Yeah.
But low major to high major, it's $150,000 a guy. And like I said, the team could pay for it. So if I transfer to Auburn, and Auburn's got a cajillion dollars in NIL money, then fine. I want Andrew Bogut to transfer to, from like Utah Valley State to Auburn. All right, I'm paying you $1 million to come to my school.
Yeah.
I'll pay you 1.15, and then I pay the buyout. Make it like the soccer system. Make it like the FIBA system, where, hey, look, if I'm going to develop players for the higher level teams, I'm going to get compensated.
Yep.
Plus, I might have a chance because now that 150 that's coming to me, now I could put that in my NIL, and I have a chance to keep a couple of players that would transfer to another school anyway. They got to do something because it's an interesting deal.
It's an amateur professional league now. Let's just call it
it's just professional.
Yeah, but they can't. They can't because collegiate athlete is meant to be amateur. So it's like it's so strange at this point that they still try to mess with the eligibility. If you've played pro overseas, you kind of just leave it open slather. Have it 25 and under. Just leave it at that. 25 and under, sign what you want, full trades, just go full NBA model, fuck it. Like there's no, all these rules are ridiculous. Like it's like, but then pro, this is the kicker, right, pro? If players can move at their very whim in the college system, should colleges be allowed to trade them?
That's a funny thing, Bogues, you bring that up. A couple of people have talked to me. I'm just waiting for trades to come up.
Yeah.
Why not? Like 80% to 90% of these players are making these changes based solely on money.
100%.
They don't care about the fit. They'd go to school in Afghanistan. All right? They'll go to school in Kabul if they're going to get paid a couple of $100,000 more than my school could pay me now. Fuck it. I'll go to Kabul to go and play. And that's crazy. They'll go anywhere to play for more money. It doesn't matter if they're going to play, if they're not going to play, if it's a good fit, bad fit, if they got Mike, they got Rick Pitino coaching them, or they have a blind guy coaching them. They don't care. Just give me more money, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
So why not throw trades? I would love that.
Yeah, 100%.
I would love that.
If you want, you can't just move from a team and quit on a team on a whim. Teams trying to build for 3 or 4 year programs, get some. That's how you build a championship. Generally, you can't just buy it. Well, now you can. But if you're going to have that flexibility to just opt out and leave, we have the flexibility of saying we don't think you're worth the money we're paying you. We're going to trade you. Then you'll see all this slow down. But they need some heavy rules, and it's so open slather. No one knows who's coming and going, what the rules are. It's pretty wild.
Two more things in the NIL real quick. One is Colin Gillespie's brother. All right. Plays for the Phoenix Suns. So Colin Gillespie's making, I think, like $900,000.
Yeah.
His brother
is making more.
Just signed an NIL deal for $3 million to play, and he plays 32 games a year, and he plays 82 games.
Can you imagine that? He's like, hey, bro, want me to take you out to dinner? And he's taking out the brother playing in the NBA and saying, get whatever you want on the menu, it's on me.
$3 million. And the second thing is, I read today about a guy from Vanderbilt that entered the transfer portal 13 minutes after they got eliminated from they got eliminated from. 13 minutes he was in the transfer portal. And that's another thing, Bogues. Like, why not wait until like May 1st to enter the transfer portal so you don't have these guys entering like the way they are?
Yeah, and
I don't care. It's comical to me.
Like, But bro, at 18, 19, we all make stupid decisions, and we're all emotional with things, right? So you go into an NCAA tournament game, Sweet 16, you think this is, if I play well, I've got a chance for the draft or whatever. Coach, benches you, or you don't play the minutes, or you play shit. Out of that huddle, I'd be calling whoever it is saying, put me in the transfer portal. Like, because I'm so riled up and pissed off at coach, fuck the school, whatever. But then a week later, I'll be like, hang on, like maybe you come to your senses, but that's a valid point. Make them wait a month so it's not as reactive. Let them cool their jets. Give the school a chance to somewhat re-recruit them to stay, rather than making it so reactive after a bad game and coach looked at me the wrong way. I'm 19, 20, you're like, oh, yeah, I want to get out of here. And if you had the opportunity to do it, you'd push the nuclear button after the game and then regret it after, but it's too late, right? So that's a really valid point. Make them wait. All right, fact or fake news. What center in the league has the most deflections, do you think, Pro?
Bam Adebayo. I'm going to get it wrong, but I say Bam Adebayo. Who is it?
Nikola Jokic. And, get this.
Really?
He's led NBA centers in deflections for 6 straight seasons. Is that not wild? Because he gets such a bad rap defensively. His numbers this season are very, 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 very high end for the defensive end. He's not athletic. He's not a rim protector, but what else he does is gets deflections and reads the play well. This is the interesting one. Mm-hmm. He has, so they obviously chart this, he has the most kickball violations.
Really?
Yeah, so 127 kickball violations this season.
That's the soccer thing, right?
Yeah, but it's just, Draymond Green brought it up in a press conference and just said he just has such an uncanny ability to kick the balls in plays that were supposed to get a layup or an easy shot from a bounce pass. He'll just get his foot to it. Team gets the ball back, but it stops an easy shot, and he's at 127 kickball violations. That's
crazy.
Which is just crazy. So sorry, that's since the start of 2020. He's at 127. He was at 56 last season, and he's very, very ambidextrous. He's got 67 violations with his right foot and 50 with his left. But it's a quirky stat, but just it does change. When I hit a backdoor pass and I think I've got a layup and someone boots it, you're like, oh man, like if we would have just got through without a layup, now you got to reset and run a slow, grimy offense again. So just goes to show you, a guy labeled as a poor defender, he's he's not that. That's for sure.
I just sent you Bogues. So I told you, I always tell you, I listen to Brian Scalabrine, Frank Isola on Sirius Radio. They have this guy from Texas named Ronaman that makes up these hilarious songs about NBA players and whatnot. So they had a Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run, and he sings it like it's just a spoof, right? And he sings it like Nikola Jokic. It is hilarious. I just sent you the video. Look him up because he's got a million of these things.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I like those kind of things.
Jokic Born to Run song is hilarious. I just sent it to you. But no, on your point though, with the defensive stuff, it just goes to show you how smart the guy is. He's not a great, I wouldn't characterize him as a great defender regardless of that stat or not, just from the eye test. But the guy's brain is one of the smartest I've ever seen in the game. And, you know, it just goes to show you what because I really feel as though, like, you know, either you just naturally have it or you're just really smart. Because there are a lot of guys who aren't really physically there defensively that can't do a million different things, but they're smart enough to sort of angle you or get a deflection or just outsmart you. And, you know, it just goes to show what kind of brain the guy's dealing with as far as being able to do that. And it's really good motor skills. So
I agree. I agree totally. Yeah, 100%. Next one, most threes off the bench in a single season, pro. Who you got for me? NBA history.
All right, Bogues, I did hear about this. I usually don't look at the list that you send me because I don't want to, you know, just cheat the whole time. But Peyton Pritchard just broke it, right?
Yeah, 236, which is amazing. Any clue for who 3, 4, and 5 are? 2, 3, and 4. Actually, number 2 is an active player in the league right now.
Active player in the league. It wasn't Tyler Hero when he came off the bench, was it?
No, it's Beasley.
Beasley?
Yeah, he actually broke it. He was at 219. Ellington 218 and
Wayne Ellington
and Ross with the Magic 217. Okay. So useless on that one.
Useful. Yeah. For sure, useful.
I agree. Pritchard's having a phenomenal year.
Pritchard's killing it. I mean, how about that contract, Bogues, that they signed him to? I mean, talk about
what was it again?
Low market value on the deal that he signed. That was the money that he's getting. Do you know what? Do you remember they signed him last year? His salary right now is 6.7, 7.2, 7.8, and 8.4.
Yeah.
He's the best backup point guard, in my opinion, in the NBA. The guy's worth about 15.
Yeah.
And Brad Stevens got him for a 4-year deal. I don't know, what was that 4-year, like $35 million deal? I mean, that's
great deal. Yeah.
That's a hell of a contract on somebody who can
his
impact
growth
the
has
game
been
like
amazing. His growth, you know, he just continues to get better, and he's actually put the ball on the floor now, getting in the paint. He's a 2-foot finisher, gets to the line sometimes on a pump fake. Like, smart player. Another guy, a la Jokic, not the most athletic. Combine tests would be horrific. You know, most GMs would snicker at, but does a fantastic job. So I think very useful. All right, the Pistons have made history. They're officially the worst record in a prior season to making the playoffs the next, pro.
Useful, man. Those guys were really good this year. I mean, they were really good. So I would say that's useful. I mean, they were a team I thought was going to tank for another year. I thought they had more talent than they would show because they just wanted to tank to get the pick. But, man, are they a good team, and they played well. So, you know, Trajan Langdon, J.B. Bickerstaff, their whole deal, you know, missing Ivy for most of the year. I mean, those guys have really played hard, and that was a hell of a team. I would say useful for sure. Yeah,
very useful. Very useful. So they're playing good basketball. They're physical. It seems like they're almost in a fight every other week with Stewart. I'm involved in it, but they're tough. They're physical. Yeah, they've got a good balanced roster of some skills, some talent, some grit guys, some veterans. Do you know who actually made the biggest record change? So their record wasn't as bad as Detroit's. So Detroit had the worst record to make the playoff. But do you know who had the biggest record change from one season to the next?
I would say the Boston Celtics, Larry Bird's rookie year.
Half right. So it is the Boston Celtics, but it wasn't the Bird year.
Okay, what year was it?
It was the KG Big Three. So going from that one season before they all joined, they won 62 games. I think it went from 20 wins to 64 the next season or something like that, or 62, whatever they won. So they made the biggest change in record, but the Pistons obviously had the worst record of the season before. Right, so Aussie of the Week, this is done. Josh Giddey is the official Aussie of the Year, according to the Rogue Bogues podcast. His week this week again was 15.6 points, 11.3 rebounds, 10.6 assists. Dyson Daniels hard done by just because Giddey's been playing so well. I thought Dyson was going to steal it at one point. Dyson had 7 Aussies of the week. Giddey now gets to 10 with only a week left in the season. He cannot catch him, so congratulations to Josh Giddey. Playing really good basketball. Ben Simmons had one of those awards. But Giddey and Dyson, phenomenal seasons, well-deserved. Been fun actually charting these numbers because I've had to actually do the research every week to just see how much they've grown over the last season, Pro. Fact or fake news, what do you got?
Fact or fake news, there is one player that's a 50-40-90 this year up to this point, and he's from the Western Conference. Fact or fake news?
It's not Jokic, is it?
No. Fake news. It's from the East. It's Aaron Naismith. 50 from the field, 50.9 from the field, 91 from the line, 42.5 from the three-point line. He's the only guy right now, 50-40-90. Ty Jerome was a guy that was like close to it all year, but so far Naismith has it, and the guys that are closest to it, 48, 38, 88 club. The only other guy that's in that besides Naismith is Desmond Bane, and he's not going to get it. 48-1 from the field, 89 from the line, 38.5 from the 3-point line. So
Pritchard was close for a while, wasn't he? Wasn't he earlier in the season? I think
he was early in the season. Let me see what he is right now. Boston Celtics. Pritchard. Pritchard is 46-6, 41-2. 83-8, and I'll just check on your guy one more time. Denver, Jokic is 57, 42 from the 3, and 80.4 from the free throw line. So he's going to get in the gym from the fucking free throws. Talk about free throws. I got to give Giannis a lot of credit. 2 straight triple doubles, and the guy was like 10 for 11 and 11 for 12 in the last 2 games in the free throw line. Got to give him a lot of credit for that.
Heating up
big
for
time
the playoffs.
couple games.
Very important. Yeah, heating up. But that is, I would never have guessed. If you gave me a million guesses, I wouldn't have got Aaron Naismith.
No.
But tough one.
That was
a
pretty weak question this week. I know that guy
was a tough
called
question.
me out for to having riddles. Even though I don't even know if that guy exists, I don't know if he just wanted to bust my balls and make it up. But that person that did call me out, he might call me out this week for being a little different. But what are you going to do? Got to be a little
different.
Call
us out. That's it. All right, Pro. Thank you. We'll see you next week, and have a good week over there in the US. Stay warm.
Absolutely. Hey, you guys enjoying that show, brother.
All right, and just to finish, we don't have training this week, so I'm doing this solo, but NBL Free Agency has kicked off, and the Sydney Kings, we were the lucky signatures from Matthew Dellavedova. Really excited about the signing. Will bring a lot of his attributes are much needed right now in Sydney. Help our locker room, help culture, grit, determination. Anyone who saw him in the NBL finals, I think he did a phenomenal job of just willing his team to being there at the end. They were obviously unlucky. Getting up there in age, but his mindset and the way he's going about things, we love to hear where he's at there, and we still feel he has a lot of basketball left to give, and so does he. He's the one guy that you'd want to bet on to prolong his career at that age, 34 years old, to be able to play a couple more years at a high level. That's a guy you'd bet on. Diligent, recovery, weights, just does everything that he's supposed to and more. So that's why we had confidence in, there were people out there talking about, well, would teams give him a long-term deal considering his age? We decided to do that, and we think he's going to be a huge part of our success in the future, so we're pumped about that. Flynn Cameron joins Adelaide 36ers on a 3-year deal from Melbourne United. Michael Harris signs a 2-year deal to join Adelaide via Perth. Isaac White to Adelaide from Brisbane, which was interesting. Kyle Bowen returns to Melbourne United on a 2-year deal. Greeter and Peatling both return to Illawarra on 2-year deals, along with DP player Luca Yates, who will return as a development player. Dylan Stith is a free agent. Cairns decided not to pick up his option. Club option for Sean Bairstow. Who else do we have here? Elijah Pepper, the club exercises his club option. Hwang Jong Lee stays in Illawarra, which I think is a great. Illawarra is somewhat trying to keep their roster together. I'll be interested to see what they do with Kell if they can keep him. Nick Marshall is actually a free agent, so they decline his option. That was an interesting one. There was a lot of hype about him early in preseason last year. Sobey has agreed on a mutual option. Jack White has declined his option and signed in Bayern Munich over in the German league. Interestingly enough, can't play the EuroLeague games, only the club games because he's joined too late. There's a rule around that. Kyle Adnan returns to Cairns. Wardenberg returns to Cairns. Galloway returns to Cairns. Tui has declared for the draft officially. Huggins Tisha at Cairns is going to remain as a full roster player. Bryce Cotton has obviously opted out. Huge news. We touched on that a couple of podcasts ago, but that's a huge loss for Perth. Liafa has had his mutual option declined by the Sydney Kings. Sam McKinnon has been bounced as an assistant from Southeast Melbourne, which is interesting. Wagstaff returning for another year. Doolittle has signed a 3-year deal with Perth, we touched on a couple of weeks ago. Bannon declines his option, becomes a free agent via Brisbane. Gack becomes a free agent as Tasmania declines his club option. Drimmick returns to Tasmania in a club option, and Smith Milner is remaining in Brisbane for another season. So that's all the free agency stuff as of now. Still some big free agents out there. We're interested to see how the next week or two goes, but Dellavedova was the big chip that needed to fall early. Everyone was waiting to see where he goes before they make a move, and fortunately for the Sydney Kings, he has chosen us, so we're excited to get that going. The Jared versus the NBL has continued to be in the media. Lawyer letters, two billionaires having a fight. It's going to be interesting to see where that all goes. I think it's all going to go public eventually. That's the when you look at this and it gets filed in court, both in Australia and Switzerland, I believe it's been filed, that will all become something for the public because it's all going to become public information. So I think a lot of people that, I guess are making guesses about what's going on, why this, why that, the picking sides of, I think it's all going to come out in the wash eventually the way things are going. So it is unfortunate that, after a pretty good NBL season that has happened, but if Jared has gripes with the NBL and vice versa, that they need to hash it out, and you want them to get into a room to figure it out, but they haven't got to that point, and it's gotten pretty messy. So it'll be interesting to see where that all goes. And other than that, the only other interesting thing in the NBL was Stu Lash. He's become the head coach of the Brisbane Bullets. So he was, I think, signed as an advisor to the Brisbane Bullets at one point, and was helping advise kind of what they do on the day to day. Has a basketball brain background, and he was part on the board on the selection panel to select the new coach. And then I guess someone, the club tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Why don't you consider it?" And they thought he'd be the right man for the job. He interviewed for it and got it. So, I heard some of the names floating around before that. They had some pretty interesting names in the mix, and they've gone with a relative unknown. So it will be interesting to see how he goes, and looking forward to seeing that. I don't want to judge anyone that I don't know anything about. So I don't know. He has, from all reports, he hasn't been a head coach. He's coached some high school stuff, I think, over in the US and whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see how he tries to turn the club around. Brisbane definitely begging for some continuity, some consistency, trying to get something that is a identity for them, a cultural piece for them. What do they do there? I know they were after Delhi for that very reason, and unlucky Brisbane. So it will be interesting to see how he goes. I hope he goes well. I think Brisbane, I've said this numerous times, I think they're a sleeping giant in the NBL. I think they've got a real good opportunity, really good fan base. The Olympics coming up. I think it's like a perfect storm of things going on there in the city of Brisbane, and I hope to see some success from them soon. And that is really all I've got in the NBL. Everything else will heat up over the next week or two, and we'll get you that next week. But appreciate everyone tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.